Draw aloud. March 24th, 1984. I was a young Marine Corps helicopter pilot stationed in Pohang, Korea. It's winter, it's cold, it's snowing, it's moonless. I had flown on March 23rd. I experienced what it was like to get lost in the mountains. We barely made it back. So on March 24th, when my crew came to me and said, "Hey, we know you're not scheduled to fly tonight, but would you mind riding in the jump seat?" I said, "Sure." I geared up, climbed into the helicopter, and watched as 29 other Marines packed themselves in with their rifles straight, full of combat gear. And then I realized every cell in my body said, "Get out." 30 minutes later, I was sitting in the ops tent. Silent, the mission was quiet, we couldn't hear anything, and then all of a sudden, a cackle came over the radios. It was Dash 2. They were radioing back. We had just seen a giant fireball on the ridgeline ahead of us. We can't contact Dash 1. For years, I tried to figure out what was going on. How did my brain predict at that precise moment that I should get up, walk out of that aircraft with only a premonition that it was going to hit the ridgeline? That was the beginning of my research. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. In my case, it took 3 decades. So I had a question. Could I see inside the human mind? Could I grab that prior knowledge? Could I understand what those pilots were thinking before they got on that ship? So I joined a research program here in adult learning, and I have a philosopher friend, Charlie, and he's also a plumber. He said, "Art, keep it simple." So with the help of the research department and the adult learning folks, I created a protocol, and I asked 3 questions. How's the world work? How do you store that information in memory? How do you monitor your own learning? And I give you 3 crayons. And I say the only rules are you can only draw triangles, squares, and circles. And I get diagrams back like this, from 5th graders to people in their 60s, from the West Wing of the White House to people that run major corporations. As we go through these diagrams, and I've collected thousands of them, then I thought, there's a conceptual space hidden between the conscious thinking and our neural makeup. Somewhere in there is hidden how we actually think. So these diagrams, and after 3 questions, by the way, this is, it's easy to take adults and say, "Hey, here's 3 crayons, let's draw." No judgment. So after collecting thousands of those, it led to this diagram you see right here, the Draw Aloud compass. And all I did was figure out that, in reality, we navigate through human experience using 6 separate facets of cognition. We are not computational thinkers. We are combinatorial thinkers. And it's a significant difference. We are human pattern matching machines. And we consume through early life all kinds of patterns and categories that tell us how to navigate change in the real world. So let me take you through your brain. I'm going to time slice how you think and how I think. So the first thing we do really is frame the universe we're in, the perceptual space that we navigate through. The second thing we do is build a cluster of stakeholders that occupy the world we live in. Companies, customers, collaborators, competitors, community at large. And then we make connections across those stakeholders, symbolically through motion and through objects. After we make those connections, early in life we start developing relationships with those connections, using roles, rules, and reciprocity. Then we start to create measures, inputs, processes, and outputs. Our social network world is great for this because tools like Facebook and Twitter, they allow us very easily to stay connected. And we decide how much energy to invest in one relationship versus another. And then finally, the last thing we do is create comparisons of the previous facets that we've just built. And on a daily basis, your brain is asking you 6 questions about the symbols, motion, and objects that you encounter in the world. What is the quality of that information? What is the quantity of that information? What is the configuration, the composition? Can I substitute that information for something else? Can I subtract it completely? And we do this over and over and over. And you don't even realize it. It's subconscious. And if you notice, as I built a compass, there is not a single triangle in that compass. There's not a single square. And yet, in the history of cognition and the evolution of our thinking, over 40,000 years, we're still drawing triangles, squares, and circles. So let me take you inside a real-life experience. This is a diagram using Draw Aloud as Captain Sullenberger hit the geese as he took off from LaGuardia, and both engines were blown out. He went through the same process when I deconstructed what was the Miracle on the Hudson. Frame, cluster, connect, relate, measure, compare. He spent, out of a 3-minute flight as an expert pilot, the last 2 minutes doing nothing but comparing in the cockpit information: quality, quantity, configuration, composition, substitution, and subtraction. So let me take you back to 1984. This is the last picture I took of J.J. Acquisto and Dave Higgins. That was my crew. That's who I flew with. Inside that cockpit there is a little seat called the jump seat. They took off that night with another crew, and as they moved through that space, frame, cluster, connect, relate, measure, compare. The reason I knew that helicopter was going to crash was because I had grown up the son of an Army helicopter pilot. He had flown extensively in Vietnam and Korea. Those stories got inside my brain. He told me, Art, when you go to Korea, be careful. Flying in the Korean mountains in the winter at night is deadly, especially if you're using night vision goggles. There's no moon, and it's snowing. And that's what happened that night. Crew number 1 lost their way in the darkness. The PVS-5 night vision goggles failed them. They couldn't see the ridge line ahead of them. We could have predicted that ahead of time if we had listened to the prior knowledge of those that had flown before us. Tragic loss of life. Now, we owe Draw Aloud to those 29 Marines that sacrificed their lives. I'm just the messenger. So here's my idea. I want you to go to the drugstore. I want you to buy some crayons. Sneak into the mailroom, steal some white paper. The next time you get your team together, just say, hey guys, hold on. We're going to do a couple diagrams and give them the rules. Only triangles, squares, and circles. A few minutes, and answer the question. That's illuminative thinking. Draw aloud, change your world. Thank you.